On the 3rd of January, 1850, 6 men walked south from Bennett's long camp into a basin no white man had named. We came back with 5. The 6th came back later by himself, 3 days behind. He had a salt-crust for a face. He still knew the words for grace before the table. My name is Lemuel Caldwell. They called me Lem on the trail. I am writing this in the fall of 1873 because you are going to marry that Mormon rancher's son near the Provo Road, and your mother has told you only the part of the sand walking company that ends with us getting to a Mexican ranch alive. The rest of it I have kept from you for 23 years. You are old enough now. We left the Salt Lake train in the back end of October 1849. There was a map a man had passed around at the campfire. He said it was a shortcut a trapper named Walker had used, and it would put us in the California gold fields 2 months ahead of the long road by the old Spanish Trail. There were about 100 wagons that broke off. We called ourselves the Sand Walking Company after that map. By the second week of December, most of those 100 wagons had quit and turned back, or split off again, until what was left of us was John Bennett's own party. His brother Asabel and Asabel's wife, Mary, the 4 children, all under 10, a handful of single ox drivers like me, the Bryars, who I had married my name to. Sarah and Mary kept the cooking and the children. Maybe 7 wagons total when we hit the basin. The oxen rule I learned from my father in Kentucky was simple. Count when you yoke them in the morning. Count when you outspan them at night. Never count the dead ones. Counting the dead ones makes the live ones thinner. We had a brass compass, the kind a militia officer carries, the face-soft brass worn from a man's thumb. I checked it at every stop. It read true through Utah. It read true through the dry stretch in what I think now was Nevada. On Christmas Eve, we crested a low ridge and looked down at a flat white plain that ran south as far as the eye could carry, and the compass started to lie. Act 2. Bennett's Long Camp was the name we gave the place where the wagons finally stopped. It was awash with a thin seep of bad water and a stand of mesquite to burn. The wagons could not go forward. The oxen were too thin. The salt flats ran west of us, and the mountains they call the Panamint Range stood like a wall to our south and west. We had been on rations of 1 biscuit and a strip of dried beef a day for 2 weeks, children included. On the 2nd of January, 1850, John Bennett called a council at the biggest fire. 6 men would walk south. They would find the Sierras and the Mexican settlements, and they would bring back oxen and food. The rest would stay at the long camp with the women and the children and the wagons, and they would wait. He said wait however long it took. The 6 were William Lewis Manley and his partner John Rogers, Asabel Bennett the brother, a man named Fish out of Iowa, a man named Town, and me. We took the brass compass and the percussion-capped rifles and what jerked beef we could carry on our backs. We left the wagons. We left the women standing at the mesquite fire. Mary Bennett did not cry. She kissed Asabel on the mouth and turned around and walked back to her children and did not look at him again. I remember the canvas of the prairie schooners flapping in the wind that came off the salt pan. The canvas sounded like a thing breathing. The first day we made about 12 miles. The second day 8. The third day 6. Fish went down on the third day. He sat down by a creosote bush and said he would catch us up. He did not catch us up. We did not go back for him. The salt flats at sundown looked like a dry lake, the size of a county, white under the low sun. The brass compass would point one way for an hour and then slowly drift 20 degrees off. I tapped the face. It kept drifting. The iron of the rifle barrel against my teeth tasted like a coin, and the air over the flats tasted the same. ACT 3. The night of the 6th of January, we camped in a wash west of where the Furnace Creek wash runs out. A little wood, a little water. We made a fire of mesquite roots that burned blue. 5 of us now. Manley, Rogers, Town, Asabel Bennett, and me. Asabel was wrong when we made camp. He had been wrong all day, not talking straight. He would say the name of his oldest boy, and then a word in some other order. He kept touching his own mouth as if he was checking it was still there. The cold at night in the basin in January is a hard cold, a dry cold that pulls every drop of water out of a man and leaves the rest white. We all had salt on our faces by then, sweat salt. We all looked the same. Asabel slept early, back to the fire. Town took first watch. I took second. About 2 hours after midnight, I heard him sit up. He said grace. He said the Lutheran grace his father had taught him in Wisconsin. The words were clear. The pitch of the voice was Asabel's pitch. The whole thing was the voice of a man at Sunday dinner with his wife and his sons at a planed pinewood table. He said amen. He lay back down. I put another mesquite root on the fire to see him. His eyes were closed. His mouth was not moving right. The salt on his face had thickened in the cold while he slept, built itself up in white plates along the line of his jaw and across his cheekbones, the way frost builds on a window in a Wisconsin barn, but thicker. Thicker than any sweat salt could make in one night in a country with no salt wind. I woke Town, not the other two. Town came over and squatted next to Asabel and looked at his face a long time. We did not need to speak. Before sunup, Asabel sat up again and said grace again. Same words, same Wisconsin voice. The crust along his jaw was thicker. His mouth was not moving right behind it. The crust was its own face now. The face under it was not moving the way a face should move when a man is saying his father's grace. At first light, I walked Town 10 paces from the fire and said, "Quiet. We cannot bring him." Town nodded. Manley came over. Manley looked at Asabel sitting up by the fire saying grace, and Manley said, "All right." We left him a canteen and the smaller rifle and a wool blanket. He was still sitting up. He was still saying grace. He did not turn his head when we walked out of the wash. Act 4, 5 of us crossed the Panamint Range over the next 2 days. We went up a draw at Timbisha. Shoshone footpath had been worn into, plain in the gravel, generations old. We followed it because it climbed. We feared the people who had worn it. We did not see them. The footprints were sometimes a day old and sometimes a week old. They walked around us. We came out over what they call Walker Pass and went down into a valley with grass in January. First running water in 11 days. We drank like animals. The next day, we came on a Mexican rancho near a mission they called San Fernando. They fed us. They gave us mules. We told them about the women and the children at Bennett's long camp. The vaquero, who spoke a little English, crossed himself. It took us until the middle of February to get back, 4 pack mules of dried beef and beans. We came back through Walker Pass. We came down through the wash camp where we had left Asabel. The mesquite root fire was a cold black ring. The canteen was gone. The rifle was gone. The blanket was gone. No tracks in the wash. The gravel was clean. We did not call his name. We went on. We reached Bennett's long camp on the 4th day of the return. All the women and children were alive. The oxen mostly were not. Mary Bennett came out of the schooner first. She asked about Asabel. Manley told her we had left him in a wash 3 days from the Mexican country. He did not say more. She nodded and walked back to the schooner. 3 nights later, Asabel walked into camp on his own feet from the basin. No canteen, no rifle, no blanket. His face was salt-crust from the line of his jaw to his hairline. Eyes closed, mouth a slit in the crust. He sat down at the biggest fire and said, "Grace." He could not chew. We tried to feed him broth from a tin cup. The broth ran out the corners of the slit. He said grace before he tried to drink, and grace again when we wiped his chin. Mary sat across the fire for 3 nights and did not look at his face. He died sitting up on the 3rd night, mid-sentence in his father's grace. Mary would not look at him. Sarah Breyer helped me cut the canvas off his schooner ribs and wrap him in it. We buried him in a shallow grave a 1/4 mile from camp under a heap of basalt cobbles to keep the coyotes off, his face still salt-crusted under the canvas. Act 5. That is the part of the sand-walking company your mother did not tell you. There is a rule that came out of the basin. It is older than the trail. The old vaquero at the San Fernando Rancho said it in Spanish at the kitchen table the night we ate. If a man's face crusts up in one night in a country with no salt wind, you do not leave him alone with the fire. You do not let him say grace at the fire. You bury him in his own canvas before sunup. The vaquero said his grandfather had told him so after a thing came out of the Sonora Desert wearing his uncle's face in 1802. I broke all 3 of those rules with Asabel Bennett. I left him with the fire. I let him say grace. I helped bury him in the afternoon, hours after sunup, 2 weeks too late. I am the reason he came back, or the thing wearing him came back. I'm not sure now which of those things is the same thing and which is different. Asabel Bennett's grave is still out there in the basin a 1/4 mile from where the long camp was. The Timbisha Shoshone know the place. I have heard from a freight driver out of Daggett that they walk around it. They do not walk over it. They have a name for it in their language. I do not know the word. That is all of it. Now you know. Go marry your rancher's son. Do not take the sand-walking shortcut to anywhere. Your father, Lem, surveyors, hotshot wildland firefighters, search and rescue, desert hikers, U.S. Border Patrol, NPS rangers, brine pond workers. What is the one rule from your line of work that civilians never understand the weight of, the rule you never break past dark and never explain twice? Total spoken words, 1969. Runtime estimated speed, 0.72. 18.2 min, nay, narration only, plus hook gaps, plus stinger.